The agenda of what we're going to go through today is right here on the screen. So we're going to talk a little bit about FinOps, the current state of FinOps, the FinOps operating model and team structure, the three phases of FinOps, and how it relates to some of the AWS-native tools and capabilities that are available to you today. We'll talk through some AWS best practices for the FinOps phases. And then we'll talk briefly through some of our FinOps offerings, specifically as it relates to CSP and AWS customers. And a real quick introduction just before we get going. My name is Marcus Benson. I'm the National Principal Architect for FinOps here at Insight and help lead our go-to-market strategy, our service offerings, and strategic delivery for our FinOps customers. And with me today, I have Stephen Fleischaker. And Stephen, I don't know if you want to do a quick intro.
Sure. My name is Stephen Fleischaker. I'm a cloud solutions architect with the national scale multi-cloud team. I've been working with customers in FinOps for about the last 7 years within AWS. So thank you, Marcus.
Thank you. All right. So before we get into some of the best practices and specifics around AWS, I just want to cover a couple of high-level topics. The first of which is why FinOps. We've had countless client interactions with enterprises, with smaller organizations, with medium-sized organizations that really all repeat the same themes, which is most clients that we're working with have suffered a negative impact on their business through poor cloud financial management. The majority of these organizations overspend their cloud budget, and typically that's only discovered once the bill actually needs to be paid. The level of waste across customer environments is typically anywhere from 20 to 30% on average. And over half of those organizations, worry daily about cloud cost management. And a lot of this is really attributed to just overarching complexity. There's a huge number of services in each cloud provider that all, generate their own costs through their own pricing model. Creating millions of lines and data records in these huge detailed billing files that you download from the providers. And this gets even more complex if you're a multi-cloud customer. This really just kind of multiplies the difficulty of this. And it really gets more complicated too when you have many different business units, project teams, departments that are all consuming these resources at varying levels of maturity, governance capabilities, and cloud, FinOps maturity. So what is FinOps? How is it done, and how can it help? So FinOps is really the evolving financial management discipline that really is focused on driving collaboration between the technical, financial, and business and product teams to make sure that those product teams can make cost-aware and data-driven spending decisions. Very similar to the way DevOps, kind of revolutionized end-to-end product delivery and created those, collaboration channels that really weren't there before between engineering and development teams. FinOps is really trying to drive that same behavior of really breaking down some of those silos and barriers between teams and getting teams, really kind of marching to the same beat of the same drum. And typically FinOps is driven from a core central FinOps team that is working with these engineering teams, these operation teams, the business and product teams, making sure they have executive sponsorship of this program, and working with finance and procurement on all of the various activities that a FinOps team should be working on, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Typically, the FinOps approach is driven in a three-phased approach of inform, optimize, and operate, which is an iterative approach. So this isn't just a once and done kind of thing. You're going to continuously cycle through these three phases and continue to develop, your maturity and your capabilities around these three phases as you grow and as you get better at FinOps. The first phase is the inform phase, which is really all around enabling the right level of visibility across, all of those different teams that I mentioned before. The optimize phase, which is around, once you have the visibility and know where the waste is, you can start to look at, the right pricing models, right sizing, automation, bring your own license programs, workload placement, making sure you're leveraging cloud native services. And then as you move into the operate phase, it's really all around, how do you make this more programmatic? How do you continue to improve on this? How do you continue to gain traction with the business teams? And a lot of that's driven through, culture, organizational change management, continuing to improve, governance capabilities, reporting capabilities, and looking for new ways to drive value to the business. And so FinOps is really now practiced across every major industry. The top cloud initiative for 2022 across all organizations was still, optimizing existing use of cloud. The second was migrating more workloads to the cloud, which again directly affects the cost and the amount of spend that you have in the cloud. And then moving from on-premise software into SaaS, which SaaS can also be managed through FinOps methodology and FinOps capabilities as well. So all of these, really show that there's a continued need to enable FinOps and make sure that you are, doing the right things in your organization to drive the right cost-conscious behaviors. A lot of organizations are starting their FinOps journeys off with a massive amount of cloud spend from day one, which creates a whole bunch of challenges. Remediation is a lot more difficult than putting in, the right framework, the right guardrails at the start. FinOps is complex. It, varies in maturity level across, different organizations. The challenges typically differ by maturity level, by company industry, by company size, by the amount of spend they have. And again, FinOps is not just a technical discipline. It's not just putting a tool in place. It's really a cultural shift and a set of behaviors that need to be driven across different personas within the organization. So the first phase of FinOps, as I mentioned before, is the inform phase. The inform phase is really all around creating the right levels of visibility across the different personas in the organization that need to have visibility. So without, the proper visibility, you're always going to have waste. You're not going to know where that waste is, and you're not going to be able to take care of that and remediate that waste. And so you really need to start with the right level of governance. And this is true regardless of the cloud provider that you're using. Each cloud provider has their own version of a cloud adoption framework that you can use as a guide to create the right behaviors, the right policies, the right governance around resource consistency and hygiene, which is incredibly important to be able to do FinOps successfully, to be able to report on your spend at the level that you need to report on it, and to be able to follow up with the right owners when you have an issue that needs to be remediated. So this really starts at the top. So making sure that your account hierarchy, your organizational units are properly organized to enable that right level of visibility, to enable the right level of showback and chargeback across your environment. And you could be utilizing, a few of these capabilities to get to that level of visibility. Utilizing organizational units to make sure accounts are properly categorized by maybe environments, business unit, applications that they support, and then leveraging things like tags and naming standards to put additional detail around those resources so that you can make the right decisions from a management perspective. And so that governance really enables you to create meaningful reports. So role-based access control and persona-based reports that are really meaningful to the audience that you are putting them in front of. So for executives, for example, they're probably not going to care about the same level of detail as your product, your engineering, and your resource owners are. So making sure that you have different dashboards for different personas is going to help increase the utilization of these reports. So making sure you're enabling views across daily, monthly, quarterly, annual views, making sure that you are showing anomaly views, trending views, forecasting versus actuals, showback reports, and especially for those product engineering and workload owner type personas, efficiency level reporting to make sure that they can see when there's opportunities for them to optimize their environment and reduce their costs. And a really important piece in the inform phase, and this is often overlooked, especially kind of earlier on in organizations' journeys, but it really needs to be planned for kind of right at the start. And that's developing meaningful KPIs to be able to track your success. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. I love that quote from Peter Drucker. It's especially true when it comes to FinOps and cost optimization. So making sure that you have KPIs in place that tell a story, that can tell you and give you some context of, is that good spend or is that bad spend? Is that waste? Is that going to the right, the right place, or do we not need that spend? Is that not providing value for our organization? So some of those KPIs to start thinking about, and some of the more common KPIs we see kind of from the FinOps framework and the FinOps methodology are things like RI savings plan, spot usage versus on-demand usage for your EC2 environments. So this will tell you how well utilized, RI savings plans and these committed use discount programs are in your environment. And really, as you mature your FinOps capabilities, you should be looking to cover a certain percentage of your environment by RIs and savings plans and managing that to that KPI. So for an example, if you're a run stage customer, really mature, maybe you have an 80% coverage number, that's your KPI. If that coverage drops below 80%, that should trigger an action from a FinOps analyst or a cost optimization engineer to go out and look for new opportunities to top off those RI savings plans and spot instances to continue to drive better savings across your environment. Other more common KPIs are things like forecast variance versus actuals, tagging coverage or allocatable cost coverage, utilization rates of reservations, percentage of resources orphaned, average hourly cost, cost per normalized compute hour. These are all different KPIs that, excuse me, can really tell different stories as it relates to your spending. And as you move into the optimize phase, typically we talk about optimization in, really 2 or 3 different categories, and that's usage optimization, which is typically driving less usage of a service. So things like right sizing, scheduling things to be turned off when they're not needed, deleting orphaned resources, et cetera. So really, again, just reducing the amount that you're using for a service. And then typically the other area of optimization that's most commonly talked about is rate optimization. So rate optimization is really going to be, your reserved instance programs, your savings plan programs, and your spot instance programs. Really any programs that are going to help you reduce the rate that you're paying for that service. So if you think about, cost in the cloud, cost is equal to usage times rate. So those are really the 2 levers that you have to be able to optimize your spend. So typically the right order of optimization is you want to typically right size your usage first before your rate optimization. And the reason is, usage optimization really should be an ongoing activity that's happening, on a weekly or monthly basis, and being managed by the resource owners themselves. And that needs to be happening because if you're purchasing RIs, savings plans, and other commitment-based discounts, but you're not right sizing, you're probably paying for a bunch of capacity that you really don't need. So you could further reduce or further increase your savings by going through that usage optimization process first, and then going through that rate optimization, as kind of that step 2. And there really is a third category too that we talk about a little bit, which is licensing optimization. The cloud providers do have their own kind of bring your own license programs. So if you own licenses, SQL licenses, server licenses, for example, you can possibly leverage those in the cloud if you have the right, coverage from a support perspective. And from a KPI perspective, again, there are optimization specific KPIs that can help drive, again, those good behaviors across your environment. So again, looking for RI versus on-demand usage, average cost per normalized compute hour over time is a really great way to measure your ongoing optimization efforts for EC2. if you're seeing your cost per normalized compute hour over time increasing, there's a pretty good opportunity or a pretty good chance that you have an opportunity to right-size some resources or potentially buy RIs and savings plans to drive that cost per normalized compute hour down again over time. And so I mentioned the third phase of FinOps is the operate phase, which is really all around trying to make this programmatic and repeatable. And one of the ways to do this and drive the right accountability and drive the right behaviors across the different personas in your environment that really have accountability to this is by creating some ongoing processes, like ongoing cost report monitoring, maybe being driven by a FinOps lead who's reaching out to different workload owners if they detect an anomaly, for example, or a big deviation on budget versus forecast. Ongoing optimization report monitoring. Again, this should be at least a weekly activity by workload owners to make sure that they're consistently looking for opportunities to right size, to delete idle instances, and make sure that they're driving, really the most value they can out of every dollar they're spending in the cloud. Monthly FinOps team reviews. So as you establish that FinOps practice, making sure that there is a monthly meeting between those FinOps stakeholders to talk about strategy, planning, roadmap development, reviewing the prior month's spend for anomalies and variances, looking for new optimization focus areas, and then also reviewing and celebrating wins. Showback chargeback report generation, this should be a monthly activity. So making sure that you're closing out those invoices every month and showing and charging back spend to the various cost center owners that actually own the resources. And then, as kind of that next step to that showback and chargeback report, you could then start to schedule some monthly business reviews with those cost center owners to discuss that prior month of spend, optimization efforts and opportunities, look at trusted advisor checks for additional optimization efforts, and discuss and kind of work through any blockers that they may have. Quarterly planning activities to do budget reviews, identify new potential workloads, realign forecasts and budgets based on that new information, establish new priorities, and then annual planning reviews to look at that past year of spend, forecast for the next year, negotiate additional service level discounts, and look at additional pre-commits and other priorities that they may want to refocus. And Stephen, do you have anything that you'd like to add to?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this slide in particular highlights that earlier slide you pointed out about how it is an overall organizational cultural change. Many of these conversations can't be managed by, say, one element of, all the conversations can't take place at the workload owner level. For instance, savings plans, RI purchases, organizational investments, PPAs, EDPs. But on the other hand, your finance team isn't positioned necessarily to decide whether or not a specific workload is highly optimized, or whether there's going to be a return on investment if you engage in an instance modernization effort. So a lot of the process as you grow in maturity has to do with being able to facilitate these conversations and have them taking place on a regular and consistent basis. And that's that cultural change. So there are tactical opportunities here. And going back to reporting, there's issues related to like signal to noise, where small costs may trend, may add up over time, may prove significant. But if you're only looking at it at a very high level, you'll lose that context. So you need to have your workload owners in their specific accounts looking at their workloads on a regular basis. At the same time, you also need to have your center of excellence, your finance team, your FinOps team, all having these conversations so that you can optimize your overall spend, and you can begin to look at how this all maps to your development roadmap and your business conditions and your strategy and your planning, so that you can get value out of the spend, not just simply reduce the spend, but meet the business's needs and help it to pivot and be able to easily adapt to changes in the environment to get value from their spend.
Yeah, and you made a good point, because not all spend is bad spend. If the spend is bringing value to your business, that's good spend. So being able to contextualize, that cost data, that spend data, back to actual business metrics, business KPIs that matter to you is really where you should be kind of aiming and trying to get to from a FinOps standpoint. And I'll give a quick example of that. An AWS customer that we were working with, was a large video game console manufacturer. And so we helped them, worked with them on some KPI workshops and helped to identify, some of those initial KPIs that mattered to them. And some of those KPIs were things like, spend per monthly average, user hour, for example, or spend per active console per month. And that allows them to start looking at things like seasonality. So like, after Christmas, when everyone opens up their new video game consoles and connects it into the network, how does that affect their cost in the cloud, when that happens? And they can start to track that and relate that cloud spend back to, those metrics that actually matter to them as business.
Yeah.
And so some other operational pieces to start thinking about as you move through the third phase of FinOps is, things around governance policy. So enforcing tagging standards, defining and enforcing regional usage policies and restrictions, creating a service catalog with, allowed services, and then also, disallowed services. Maybe some of those more costly SKUs need an exception process or some kind of approval process to be used. Defining and implementing data lifecycle policy to automatically move data from different storage tiers, depending on its actual use. Implementing automation to start and shut down resources. Automation to clean up, orphan disks and snapshots. Enabling auto scale where it's appropriate in those, more cloud native type workloads. Leveraging serverless and auto pars and parking of resources for those, more inconsistent workloads that really, maybe have a monthly or even every couple of months have a spike that they need to have some resources available for. And then again, from a process standpoint, making sure that, all resources are assigned an owner within tags or within, an account. Creating a cross-functional FinOps or RACI to make sure that different personas understand exactly, what their responsibility is and their accountability is to FinOps, depending on their role. Cloud COE approval required for, again, non-standard cost profiles, having an exception process in place, and then requiring cloud education to include FinOps as a topic and as a course. And that brings up kind of the next point, which is really, make training a priority. This is an example of a training plan that a large enterprise, a Fortune 50 oil and gas company had put together that they actually called their cloud driver's license. And if you wanted access to a cloud environment, you had to pass your cloud driver's license training courses to get access to those environments. And included in those required courses was, of course, a FinOps methodology course and how each persona and functional group is going to be impacted and what their responsibilities are. And some of those other courses were things like cloud fundamentals, a company-specific cloud strategy course, company-specific cloud operating model course. So how do you actually, provision resources, manage resources, optimize your cloud over time, and then some persona-specific training courses as well, depending on the role. And it's important to use, a combination of different learning options because everyone learns differently. Not everybody learns well in that self-serve or kind of virtual model. Some people do better in person, with a bigger group of people so they can kind of talk through different things, through different concepts. But it's important to gain, again, executive sponsorship and executive support to make sure that, training and enablement is something that is included in those, kind of standard training plans that you're utilizing and leveraging for cloud. Okay. Well, that's it from kind of a methodology standpoint. So next we'll talk just briefly about, some of our capabilities here at Insight. And I know a lot of this is specific to CSP as well. So we'll talk a little bit about our CSP capabilities specifically. But we have a variety of different service offerings and capabilities that we can offer to our clients in this space. We have what we call our FinOps Accelerator program, which is really that kind of full solution. So it includes a current state analysis of your cloud spend, looking for optimization opportunities and potential savings with, obviously a prioritized list of those recommendations. It also goes through your FinOps practice strategy and enablement. So making sure you have the right roles in place, the right team structure in place, the team is positioned within the organization where it should, and that you have the right processes and ongoing efforts and activities identified compared to your maturity model. Obviously, you want to make sure you're focused on the right areas and the right activities depending on how mature you are in FinOps today. And then driving really that cultural piece and cultural adoption through organizational change management, which we include as part of that accelerator program. We have an Insight Cloud Care for CSP program. So if you are a CSP customer of ours consuming AWS, you actually get access to a cloud success manager. You get access to a reporting tool, and you get access to kind of ongoing support around FinOps. We can help with governance and CAF remediation if that's a big blocker to your FinOps success. We can help with internal, third-party, and custom reporting solutions. We have envisioning workshops if you just need some, kind of a baseline of education for your team, optimization-specific sprints, change management-specific capabilities, and even managed FinOps capabilities as well as part of our managed cloud program. So the Insight Cloud Care for CSP, again, this is the program that is included for all of our CSP AWS customers. This gives you access to a cloud success manager, training and assistance with a cloud reporting tool. We utilize and leverage Cloud Checker today for AWS rebuild customers. You get CSMs that will assist with different ways to save money. So those cloud success managers will help you identify underutilized, unused resources, right-sizing opportunities, reserved instance and savings plan opportunities, and help you manage that over time. They also can help with tagging strategy and tagging support. And we'll also be offering some advanced reporting capabilities coming soon for our AWS CSP customers as well. And so we've done this very successfully at a lot of CSP customers where we've offered the Insight Cloud Care. For this customer specifically, this was actually a manufacturing software provider. We helped them identify and save over $600,000 a year through refined RI management through that CSM that they got as part of the Cloud Care program. And then the FinOps Accelerator program, so that more consulting flavored solution, we've done this very successfully at dozens of Fortune 500 organizations where our average savings that we find per customers is typically 20%. And the average ROI our clients see on these engagements is over 2,500%. So you can see right here in this story, the client savings in this situation was about 10x the cost of the engagement. And that's a very common result that we see from these efforts.
Yeah, just to add to that, even in customer cases where the customer's environment is extraordinarily well managed, which was, I think, the case in this particular case study, we've still found opportunities for cost optimization because it's not just a matter of a single account being extraordinarily well managed with tagging in place and with automation in place. Large organizations, small organizations follow similar patterns in that business line or business owner will typically have 3 to 5 accounts, and large organizations, depending on how many lines of business and how many contracts, could have hundreds of accounts. But typically what that'll break down into is number of shared accounts, a number of dev accounts, a number of production facing accounts, what have you. Within that spend, which could be potentially millions of dollars of spend, there may be a few accounts that don't have retention policies or that aren't addressing unattached or unused resources like EBS volumes or what have you. There may be an opportunity there for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of savings. And again, bringing somebody in who can, look at that and provide a second pair of eyes to review the spend and make recommendations, and quantify what the value would be to make changes within the environment. Overbuilt dev environments where things are built to production standard, or what have you, licensing opportunities, the full range of opportunities. Even in very well managed environments, there may be opportunities there to either validate the existing processes or to provide opportunities or identify opportunities for cost optimization or savings. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Yeah, and that, I think, wraps up our presentation for today. And obviously, if your organization is struggling in this area, if you have needs around financial reporting in the cloud, optimization support, or organizational change, if for example, you're trying to roll out a FinOps practice and a FinOps program, and you're just running into a lot of resistance across engineering teams and different teams, reach out to us. We have organizational change management practitioners that can help you kind of create a plan, a strategy for how to get through some of that change resistance and turn some of that kind of people-dependent ROI into real ROI.
Yeah, just seconding what Marcus is saying, we've been doing this for a number of years across multiple clouds. Our customers, even in just the ICC program, we have several hundred customers that range from small commercial companies to actual IT departments for states, large government contractors, down to small stores. And those patterns, some of them apply across all of the environments. Some of them are very specific to what a city may require in terms of invoicing and purchase orders, what have you. But that experience has proven valuable to our customers over a number of years. We've been able to provide a lot of value to our customers through these programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. And we appreciate your attendance and look forward to any questions that may come up from this.